What is up?
Yeah,
I'm still in the Texas Pete gambling cave.
it looks awesome. That was fun. That was a lot of fun.
uh,
Uh,
so-
I do
y-
wish that we would have done it like a week earlier, because then there would have been
yeah, I was thinking the
like
same. If we had streamed the Tennessee Bama game, it would have been like just such good content.
yeah, it would have been chaos. But
Yeah,
yes, no, that was fun, man. That was fun. Thanks for having me up. That was it took me a couple of days to get home. It was a little bit of a trek, but it was fun for sure. What was this?
yeah, it was a good time. Glad to have listener in the gambling cave with us. My wife was in the gambling cave with us. So
That's right. Yeah, we didn't really do any or I mean, I didn't do that much gambling in the gambling cave.
I kept
Um,
trying to get you going, and you were like, I don't like anything.
Well, like I felt off, and I didn't want to like reach. I didn't want to be like I felt off because it was like everything, like just the whole day was thrown off because like it just I was like trying to get it there to you before 3:30, and then that was an adventure because my phone died, of course, and then I'm just like I always love what I'm like, you know what? I can figure it out. I can figure out where Tyler lives. I've never been there, but I don't have GPS. I don't have a map. I'm sure I can just figure out where Tyler lives. I don't know
You
why I
just
was that confident.
you just sensed it where I lived.
Yeah,
The
that's what was
exact
happening.
address.
Yeah. No, but it got worked out. Thank God. That was fun. And then the 3:30 games were really good. Like, I mean, LSU, I understand, ended up being a blowout. There's a lot of stuff I feel like that happened that we watched, but we didn't really get to. That we have to get to today. I've got some stuff that to get off my chest of some
Oh
of the stuff
god.
that happened last night. Yeah, no, like I mean, like I think it's like I think it's all stuff that our listeners will agree with, which is shocking. Um,
Every listener's gonna agree.
I
That's
don't,
your
I
prediction?
don't, I don't. Well, you know what? If they don't, the group that doesn't agree, I think it would just be Bama fans, and I think the people would be shocked about that. I just like some very disheartening things from yesterday, like very little of which came from the game.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll get those thoughts from you. I feel like we just go cold open at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
Not even I mean, we are brought to you by Texas Pete, of course.
Yeah,
We are college football uncensored. You guys know me as Tyler. This is my co-host Chris.
that's me.
And yeah, it was a fun day. Outside of your trek getting up to my house. We got to watch a great LSU game
Hmm.
where I started that game. I was like, oh, this could be a Tennessee LSU like game here if
Yeah, they're
LSU
gonna get run
doesn't
out of the
kind
building,
of
huh?
tighten up, and ended up the other way around, which was crazy. Um, yeah, agree. Ben Diesel in the chat says felt like a sleepy slate. Definitely
Hmm.
felt that way, which made it all the more tough to stream a game when you're like, oh, we're just watching all blowouts. This is this is
Right.
good. But maybe we'll have to do another one of those because we got some really good feedback on it. We were getting more live watchers than we typically do for our podcast. So um,
I mean, I'm totally down for that. Like I said, I had a blast. I had a blast going up there. It was, like I said, a little bit of a trek, but it was still a
yeah,
lot of fun.
yeah. Had it not been such a disaster getting here, you probably would have had more fun.
Probably, yeah.
But you let it make you sad. You didn't like the board anymore.
that's not that's not what happened.
Wife came through in the clutch. We ordered pizza. It never showed up.
Yeah.
She went and got it for us, which was great.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, just all in all, great night. So, well, let's get into it. Anything you want to
Also,
cover
I wish
before
I
we
would have.
start?
No, I won't say about it. Yeah, I wish I would have like thought it through that I was just gonna stay up there because then I wouldn't have toned down the drinking so much either.
Right.
That was a big mistake on my end. It's
Yeah.
always a
Yeah.
mistake, honestly, if you ever tone down your drinking. You know what I mean? For the sake of others.
Yeah. Microphone issues last night. Not sure
When do we have
why.
microphone issues?
Your microphone kept going out.
All right. Fix your microphone next time. Okay, yeah.
Well, anything to get into before we get into the recaps of the games?
I have a pretty cool announcement. So one of my buddies is throwing a let me start by saying this. Georgia and Florida fans, which I know this is the biggest week of the year for you. Um, and it's weird because it's like Georgia Florida has been a bucket list game for me forever. I've never been. I'm going this weekend.
Until now.
Until now, I'm going to go this weekend. It'll be my first time going. My good buddy Grant Tall is going to take me on my first adventure down to Jacksonville to see what it's all about. And on top of that, one of my other buddies is going to be hosting a kickoff concert that Thursday in St. Simons, which is pretty awesome.
Like, is he the act?
No, so like it's actually just it's a whole group of them. So one's the act, one's promoting the gig. It's gonna be pretty awesome. So he hit me up like last week. I was like, hey man, any chance you're going down to Georgia, Florida? We've got some extra tickets to this concert. And I was like, I actually am going down to Georgia, Florida, but I'm not gonna be down there until Friday. So his bright idea. I mean, I should have taken credit for it. Damn it. Our bright idea. For free tickets to this concert. It's a kickoff concert this weekend in St. Simons. I'll give you all the details on it in the Facebook group, and I'll post about it obviously on my Twitter, but it's a Georgia, Florida kickoff concert. So it's featuring Andy Velo. You know him?
Yeah.
It's like an up and coming act. Listen, it's live music and there's going to be booze everywhere. So it should be awesome.
Yeah.
But we have 4 tickets to give out for free. All I want to know, for we can give 2 out before Thursday, and then we'll give the other 2 out after the next pod. But what I want to know is, I just want to hear your favorite tradition from Georgia, Florida, or your best Georgia, Florida story, and the tickets are yours. So there you go.
Like
Should be
that.
a blast, man. I'm excited for it. I hate that we're not getting down there because Grant has a real job on Friday, but like Thursday, because this is like a whole, from what I gather, obviously, it's like a weekend long like drunk fest, and it's awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty much. I've never been either, unfortunately. Would love to go at some point, but does it feel like to you? I could just be way off on this, but when's the last time that game was like a really big game?
2020. You mean like nationally?
Yeah.
I mean 2020, I think, because Georgia only had 1 loss, but Georgia had half their starters out on defense.
Yeah, I don't know. And like this, I'm not even trying to take a shot at Bama. That 2020 season is just so like. Someone brought up if you take the 20 like the COVID season away from Jimbo, like his record is like 10-22 against the SEC or something like that.
God. Yeah, I mean, well,
So all I'm saying is that's just a weird year.
yeah.
And you had like random teams, like clearly Mullen, like he had his team up in the top 5, and then all of a sudden he's fired the next year.
Hold on. What do you mean random teams?
I just felt like it was like a whole bunch of random teams. Like A&M was like top 5, and then like Florida was top 5, and turns out neither one were actually that good.
A&M was that good that year.
What, they still lost 4 games, right?
No, they went 9-1.
Oh, okay.
They won the
So
Orange
every other
Bowl,
year
yeah.
they've been awful. Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like a normal year.
Okay. So the Florida thing, first off, the only pushback I'd give you on that, and I don't give a shit if people think that wasn't like that national championship year doesn't count, because that was arguably one of the greatest teams of all time. Regardless of who they played and how they played and whatever, like that was hands down from a talent standpoint, one of the top 3 to 5 teams of all time. I will say it was weird in terms of like I think Bama played Auburn before they played like Arkansas, and then you had like the Florida Bama SEC championship, I think on the same day as like other games. Like I think there were still SEC games being played that day, which is kind of odd.
Yeah.
That part, yeah, it was bizarre. But then like Georgia, I think went what they go like 7-2, and then because they lost to Bama and they lost to Florida. How did Florida get 4 losses? They lost to A&M.
They lost like a bunch down the stretch. They lost to Bama, in the SEC game, and they
The
lost
shoe game.
the
They
shoe
lost
game,
LSU the shoe game, and then they
and they
lost
lost the bowl
to
game, right?
badly, yeah. And that was when Mullen came out and said the whole thing about how like this is next year's team or something like this isn't. That was
Right.
bizarre. I'm trying to think of what else crazy because I remember like Bama played A&M like the second game of the year. It did suck seeing like like there were games there where you could have had like there were some pretty good regular season games I feel like in the SEC because it was an all SEC slate, and then like it just this very odd. It was like you were watching like a non-con game in like NCAA like '08, just like a smattering of people around the stands, made no sense. Anyway,
Yeah, it's just a weird. But going back to the original question, okay, so let's say valid or not, 2020 season, move it, take it out of the picture. When's the last time Florida Georgia was like a huge national game?
okay,
And I'm
I'm
honestly
looking at it
asking
right
that.
now. Yeah, I mean it's weird. So maybe like I'm biased in terms of because it always feels like a huge national game, right? Okay, so
Yeah.
2019 they were both ranked in the top 10.
Sorry, that Carter Nicholson said I look very sexual with my leg propped up.
You always
I'll,
do.
I'll take that.
So this is kind of funny that you bring this up because I'm not even saying that you're wrong that like that you don't that like it wasn't a big game nationally. What I will say is, do you know that from 2018 to 2020, both teams were ranked in the top 10 every year?
In that game?
Yeah.
I guess so.
2018, which is the year that Georgia went to the Sugar Bowl. Because think about this. Mullen was there. His first year was 2018, right? And they were a New Year's Six bowl team every year. So they lost. They got kind of boat raced in 2018, 36-17. Then the 2019 game was 24-17, and it was number 8 Georgia versus number 6 Florida. And then you had the 2020 game. Georgia was 5th, and Florida was 8th. And that was the game where, Georgia had lost to Bama, and that was it so far. And then like they were decimated with injuries on their defense, like in particular. And then they jumped out to like a 14-0 lead, and it was like, oh man, like I think they scored like on like one of like the first plays from scrimmage, and then you kind of just thought I was like oh shit, because like, they were an underdog in the game, I think, and then like Florida just came back and just kept throwing wheel routes the entire game. When's the
Damn,
last time they were both undefeated is a very good question.
You have a good memory.
Thank you.
At least when it comes to that stuff.
Thank you.
Should we get into this?
2012, I think probably mattered nationally, right? That was when Georgia they were 12th at the time, and they only had one loss. And that was when they lost 35-7 at South Carolina. And then they won whatever other many games they had up until then. But Florida was undefeated and ranked 3rd in the country. That was that weird Muschamp year. And then
Jeff Driscoll.
I don't remember if he was the quarterback or not, but it's when they had the tight end who ended up playing for the Redskins or the Commanders or whatever. I can't remember his name. But
Trey Burton.
No.
Oh, yeah.
No, that was 2014, Carter. But they had this weird. He did this like weird jump from like is it Jordan something? He jumped Jordan Reed.
Yeah,
he jumped from like the 8-yard line, like trying to get in the end zone or something super weird. But yeah, I don't know. There's been some like some interesting games since before Kirby got here because it does feel like Kirby has dominated this rivalry since he got there.
Yeah, it does. So I don't know. It probably won't be happening this year for Florida, but maybe they're on the way back up. All right, you want to get to the recap of the week?
Yeah.
Because the night slate was a little boring, but there were some really good games to start the day. How about the Syracuse-Clemson game?
Yeah. So
that was insane.
I hate that I missed the second half of that because I was driving up to your place, but like it kind of feels like it was the same exact game. Like if you would have like just put on the DVR from, I don't know, a couple of years ago and be like, hey, Clemson and Syracuse are playing. I would just believe you that it was the same game.
Right. Yeah, the one where they had to come back at home and win.
Right.
So Clemson goes down 21-10, and they've already turned the ball over, I think, at that point 3 or 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
And Syracuse never did anything to really, I think maybe one drive they did, but never took advantage of the turnovers they were getting from Clemson.
Mm-mm.
And you always kind of knew that that would probably end up biting them. But what you didn't know is that DJU would get benched in the game after playing well all year. He had a bad fumble going in on the goal line. Klubnik comes in. Watching it, the story will be Klubnik came in and led them to a victory. I wouldn't go that far. I mean, he had a couple decent throws, but he didn't do anything special. Syracuse melted down, or Clemson's defense really just took over. I mean, Syracuse didn't score in the second half.
So what's weird about that is that, like, that part bums me out because you saw early on that Syracuse did some things well, like on offense and defense, that like made you think that, like, I this is probably just my own inherent bias because it's Syracuse, but like there's never a time when I was watching that when I was like, I feel like Syracuse could be an undefeated challenger in the like nationally because of how they're playing against Clemson. But there was part of me that was watching it and was like, man, I tell you what, Clemson like has like Clemson's offense to watch, like their play calling is it's awful. It's awful to watch. It is awful.
I wonder how much it is they're trying to not dumb down, but like simplify the offense for DJU, considering all of his problems last year. I wonder if they just feel like the full playbook isn't open up to them.
So the full playbook, like you think about DJU, what's the one game he's ever had that he like balled out?
He had the Notre Dame game his freshman year when he was filling in for Trevor, who had COVID, and everyone was like, "Holy shit, this guy!"
Remember how many times he threw the ball?
No,
he threw the ball like 40 times, I think. Hold on, let me see this. Double check this.
It's still It was still an impressive performance. I mean,
No, that's the whole point. But like, he's a 5-star quarterback. That's like, okay, he can throw the football. Yeah, here you go. I'm pulling up right now. So he's a 5-star quarterback that can throw the football. That's like what his high school days were. He was 29 of 44 for 439 yards. So what I don't understand, and what I have not understood for a while now, because they've been doing this since last year, is this commitment to like the read, like the zone read from this offense repeatedly. At one point, they lined up, and it was like, I don't think it was one of those things where, you know, we've had games before where it's like, and they lined up and they were like, we're running the fucking football, and that's final, and like, you know, here we go, just you know, roll up your sleeves, and that's what we're gonna do. Like Georgia's done that before, you know, other teams have done that before, like Kentucky, whatever. But like, it looked like they didn't know what to do because they don't have a receiver to go win any 50-50 balls. They don't throw the ball deep well. They don't extend plays. So everything is like in this like weird 10-yard increments of like, okay, it feels like a fucking battle, a big battle every 10 yards. It never feels it's like, hey, we're going to loosen up the defense. We're going to catch them, like, you know, biting on like crowd in the box, and then we'll go play action. It never feels like that. It always feels like, okay, well, how can we just get this fucking 10 yards for the love of God? It's like they're living like paycheck to paycheck from first down to first down, like to get to like down the field. That's what it feels like watching. And then they got stopped on fourth. That's how they fumbled the ball to go down 21-7 late in the first half, which was
that was returned for a touchdown too. So like Syracuse, they scored 14 points on offense. They had 269 yards of offense. Clemson was clearly the better team. They only had 119 yards in the second half.
Who, Clemson?
No, Q's.
Oh.
So like they just got completely shut down, and Clemson finally just stopped turning the ball over. That was really the story of the game. Clemson was clearly the much better team. But it'll be interesting to see. You know, like Dabo came out after, said DJ's still our guy, no doubt. But it kind of feels like DJ is a little mentally frail. I can't imagine that this is going to help his confidence in
No, I
game.
think that's very, very, and I do think that Dabo has done a good job of like doing his best to like get confidence in in this kid. I kept saying all year. It's like the win at Wake Forest. Somebody brought up in the chat like he was good in the Wake Forest game, and he was. Um, you know, somebody asked him about Miami too.
Yeah.
He was good in that game, and it did kind of feel like they had done so much for this kid in terms of trying to be like, hey, you're our guy, and I think that's probably something that Dabo does differently than anyone else in the country is like trying to create this, family environment, this loyalty, and like it's everything at Clemson is bigger than football, right? And
Mhm.
this kid, you heard him in like the offseason, like he thought it was gonna be a lot of people like paying or like, eating crow for some of the shit that they said about DJU from last year into this year. Um, I guess, and it might just be time, like, because at this point too, you're still undefeated, even though it doesn't feel like it. Like, I don't think if anybody, if Clemson and Bama lined up, hell, if Clemson and Ole Miss lined up, I don't necessarily look at that, or I mean LSU.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
I'm not
I
looking at that
don't.
game thinking like, man, Clemson's gonna run away with this.
No. This is not the Clemson teams of old. They have a good
Mm-mm.
defense, but any other team that's a legitimate playoff contender, like I think Oregon might,
Yeah,
they might actually smoke Clemson. Like I just don't think
yeah.
Clemson's that great. So it's not like a years
Like,
past where it's like, yeah, they feasted on a weak ACC, but they still had Trevor Lawrence or they still had Deshaun
right.
Watson. Like it's just
Travis
not like that,
Etienne.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, Shipley's
Okay, real
good,
quick.
but whatever.
I do. He's not fun to watch. That mustache. Um, I do want to touch on one thing because it gets brought up every single week. Clemson storming the field.
Oh
So
yeah, I don't know how people didn't know about that.
okay, so this is something that they do after every game and have done for years. I've
Yeah.
been to countless Clemson games where it was like Georgia Tech on a Thursday night. I've been to, as you guys have known, I've said this before. I went to the 2015 Notre Dame game where they were both in the top 10, and game day was there, and like they had to get a stop on a 2-point conversion to win. That game, the Lamar Jackson game from 2016, Georgia Tech, Georgia State. These are all games that I've been to in Clemson. They did that at every single one of those games. It's not rushing the field. It's the same as you. It's the same as like a high school. Like I don't. I'm assuming all high schools did this. I know we did at Parkview, but like after the game, everyone would go on the field and like say hey to like your friends and like whoever got done playing and all that. Like that was just what you did.
Mhm.
That's what Clemson does. And it's not like they're not storming the field like, yeah, we did it. Like, tearing down the goalpost types, like storming the field. It's just what they do. Now, I will say
It is still
it doesn't,
weird.
I mean, most like, again, Clemson is just the Southern Baptist version of A&M. Like,
Yeah.
they don't have
It's
as many. Go ahead.
it's actually insane that they still do that in 2022. Like, as
Why?
we've clearly have seen, like, what bad can happen after a game, which is a whole other thing. You got
We're going to get into
everyone's
that.
up in arms about the Jermaine Burton thing, which I get. Um, but, like, just how much could actually go wrong in that scenario versus, like, the benefit of just letting people on the field? I'm just surprised in today's day and age with everything get caught on camera that
Yeah.
they allow that still. But yeah, it's like you actually nailed it. It's like a high school thing. Like that's why
Yeah.
it's not pathetic because they just beat Syracuse because that's not why they did it. It's pathetic that it is like a very high school tradition.
Yeah. But
You
again,
know?
Clemson's a different place, man. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying this to make fun of Clemson. I'm saying this just because your wife brought this up last night. I've maintained for a long time, and it's been a minute since I've been there. I haven't been to a game there since Deshaun Watson in that year. Because I don't think that I would necessarily have the same mindset nowadays, just knowing what I know about Clemson or how I feel about Clemson. But like it was the best game day atmosphere I'd ever been to year in and year out. Like, and it was so much fun, but it's different. Like it's the only place I've ever been to where they have an in-house DJ that lines up next to the student section, will play like trap ass rap music for like an hour or like pump up music, like everything you could imagine on that playlist for 60 minutes right before the game. and then right before kickoff, also have a prayer in the stadium, like full on, bow your heads for a moment of it's the only place I've ever been to like that. So whether that's good or bad, I don't know, but it's very, very different for sure.
Yeah. So that keeps them obviously alive in the conversation. Any more games from the noon slate that stuck out to you? I mean, I didn't really see anything. Tennessee, we were laughing because
My God.
it was 52-7 at the half. So just nothing to talk about in that game. We just thought that was funny. That was funny though. Someone mentioned in the chat the 8 turnovers for Miami.
Yeah.
They get blown out by Duke 45-21 at home. There was I mean, you could not have convinced me that there was 3,000 people there. I would have been like, no, that's a lie.
No. Week in and week out, there's not.
It's just such a. I've maintained, and I know it sounds very biased coming from a Florida State guy who hates Miami, but I've maintained that I think this whole John Ruiz thing seems like it could only end poorly.
Well, what you're going to end up doing is they're going to be indebted to this one person.
Right.
And the relationship is going to be very one-sided. Crunk for Christ is that is incredible.
And he doesn't seem to be like the best of guys either.
No. But what it does feel like is that they are going to be giving like everything that Mario Cristobal is going to be trying to gain, right? Like, hey guys, this, I need this from the boosters. Everything that he's going to be trying to like his bargaining chip is basically credit. I need you guys to spot this and get this in play so we can go get these recruits. And in the meantime, before the season, it was I know I can recruit and we're going to win games. And this is the top 15 team in the AP, of course, week 2 or whatever. But it's everything he has to bargain and match John Ruiz's philanthropy and niceness is all stuff in the future. Hey man, down the road though, everything's gonna be good. We're gonna win all these games and we're gonna do this and now that you're not really able to do that and he's fronted all of this, you know what I mean? He's the one sponsoring all of the stuff with this program right now. And it's one thing to lose to Duke at home. It's year 1 losses or whatever, but to lose to Duke at home like this and you have 8 turnovers.
Yeah, and not to get financial at all, but it's not a great time when you're relying on one person that owns a business that's gotten rich to be potentially going into a recession where people are very tight with their money.
Yeah.
So if that one thing goes away from you, what do you have? I don't know. And the whole John Ruiz wants everyone to know that he's the guy that's running the program.
Yeah.
I just can't see that being a good thing long term. So I don't know. Gonna be interesting to watch. They're recruiting well still. We'll see. But it also doesn't help that Oregon looks 10 times better than they have when he's not the coach.
And the quarterback situation, man. I don't even know what to say about that part because we've kind of it's become a weekly segment now where we talk about how good Bo Nix is and that win from Georgia continues to look better and better. But yeah, that's something else, man. That is, I mean.
So that game we had on our second screen when we were watching the LSU game, and it seemed like every time we were panning down to watch the game, it was just Bo Nix throwing absolute darts all over the field. Whether they were, a 10-yard out that was just put perfectly on the sideline, or if it's a 50-yard bomb laid perfectly to the guy's hands. What do you think Auburn fans feel like when they watch Bo Nix out of Oregon right now?
I don't feel like Auburn fans feel anything inside anymore, to be honest. Of course, you look at what they where that program is, and now you have this off week. There's rumors going around Auburn that Will Friend and some of those assistants haven't been out on the road once this year.
Jesus.
I mean, think about that. That's insane. But yeah, I don't, Okay, so let me ask you this. Let me get your opinion on this because I think that this has become this constant thing. I think from Georgia fans, and I admittedly at first thought it was like okay, it's just like this like unending, never ending like want to be like to just like pound their chest. And I didn't realize that people were telling Georgia fans after the Oregon game that Oregon's shitty. Like as soon as Georgia won that game, I didn't realize that social media was telling them like Oregon always does this. No, they don't. No, they
Yeah.
don't. Like Oregon isn't always like Oregon's not A&M. Like and
Right.
if they were, they only were under Cristobal, who's not there anymore. Like what Dan Lanning has done. I hate that it's such a discredit to what Dan Lanning's doing in year one with Bo Nix as his quarterback. Like that is an incredible turnaround. And also who's the guy that was y'all's
Yeah,
who was
Kenny
y'all's
Dillingham.
Kenny Dillingham. So that kind of stuff, like that it's weird to me because it's like, man, this is like a really good, seems like a really good like job in year one. And now, admittedly, I don't think that Georgia necessarily beats Oregon 49-3 if they played again today. Maybe they
Yeah,
do.
no.
Maybe I'm completely
I don't
wrong.
think so.
I thought we saw Oregon play their worst game. I thought we saw Georgia probably play their best game, but also play a very different game because we haven't seen them throw the ball like that since then. And that's not either good. That's not neither good or bad. Is that the most impressive win of the season so far?
I mean, it was dominant. Look, if you look
It was
back,
absolutely dominant.
yeah, like UCLA, I mean, it was 45-30, but it wasn't as close as that score. You look back at their schedule, I mean, they beat then number 12 BYU 41-20. And now
That was
they beat
close game too, I think, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, the score's not very close. They won by 21 points.
Well, I'm saying it was close there, I thought, but never mind.
Number 9 UCLA, then they beat by 15. So it's like you start going down their schedule, they play Cal, Colorado, home against Washington, which, Washington's kind of fallen off a little bit. Then they host Utah. And that Utah game is going to be big because they got their asses beat by Utah twice last year. Totally just manhandled. And everyone thought Oregon was going to be really good because they went on the road and beat Ohio State, and that was a great win last year.
Mm-hmm.
But they got just dominated by Utah twice. So that's going to be a huge game. But shit, Oregon could potentially be in the playoff.
Yeah, I wouldn't even if you told me
you play Pac-12 because they have a Pac-12 championship game, right? It's just on the campus.
Yeah, no.
It's in Vegas.
I don't think it's on. I don't know. I honestly don't know where it is. It used to be in Santa Clara. It used to be where they played that Bama Clemson national championship, and tickets would go for like $9, like legit.
So let's just say let's play a scenario out where they win out, including beating Utah. So they play a Pac-12 game against what, USC?
Possibly.
And then they beat them. There's no way you leave them out.
Yeah, you do. I mean, like, they would. So, and this is the thing that's so weird too, because Georgia beat the shit out of them so badly.
Yeah.
That there are people that would argue that you can't have them in at all because of how bad they looked against elite competition. Because I think Georgia goes undefeated, at least the regular season. And then you start getting into like the semantics, because the biggest concern is if you're an SEC fan trying to get multiple teams in, or you're I think there's only 2 teams getting in from the SEC that at the end of the season will have a legitimate shot. I really do. And I think those 2 teams are going to play each other on November 5th, right? But like I don't know if enough people are going to believe in Tennessee over Michigan, especially with what we know always happens, right? When it gets to the end of the year and everything becomes this like, what have you done for me lately? Prisoner of the moment, like situation. We saw it with, like, in my opinion, we saw it with the 2018 Heisman race where Tua had led like the entire year, and then it goes to Kyler. Not saying he didn't deserve it, but it just all of a sudden like that's like switched on its head. We saw it in the 2006 Florida Ohio State game where Florida got in, but like there was a majority of the national casuals, to take a word from Josh Pate, wanted a rematch of Michigan Ohio State. Like, God forbid Michigan Ohio State play some classic like 28-27 game against each other that comes down to like the last minute, because then everyone will be saying like, Michigan was in the playoff last year and they have 1 loss over the last year, 2 losses over the last 2 years, into Clemson or to Ohio State and Georgia, Or same with Ohio State. Like, Ohio State has one loss and it's against Michigan, and that game is in Columbus, of course, like all of them have been this year. So I don't know if Tennessee, just because of the way the way the last 15 years have been, which is unfair. I don't know if the national media or the what do you call it, the playoff committee would put them in over them.
It's a fair thought. I mean, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, there's a lot to be played out. Georgia and Tennessee still got to play each other. So it's Michigan and Ohio State will play each other. So it's going to be super interesting to see what happens on the stretch here.
Well, and real quick too, just talk about like the most impressive win part of it. This is one thing that I did a lot of thinking about this today, and that is like Georgia looks so dominant the first 3 weeks of the year. And we haven't really seen that level of dominance, but that level of dominance is very, very different than anything we've seen, right? Like, so it's like, I'm not going to hold them. I'm not going to have like a knock against Georgia because they haven't beaten a ranked team 49-3 since then. But now you start looking at some of the current ranked teams, like, because South Carolina has won 4 games in a row. They're ranked. Like, by the grace of God, South Carolina has, you had just tip their caps at Shane Beamer. They were able to get stuff done last night, and not like they have done it in a very pretty way in any of their big wins, but they did it. And now you're talking about Georgia, who dominated both those games, both of them. And I know I've given them shit for not like playing a lot of games away from home, but both of those games away from home. So and now the argument I would make too, like in favor of Georgia, is like if you're like, to use my own argument against me, like, well, like we haven't seen them be that dominant, in a couple of weeks, whatever. Well, they haven't been healthy since early on. Like AD Mitchell's not there. Jalen Carter's still dinged up. Like they've got a couple of like injuries like on both sides of the ball. What if that is Georgia? What if that is who Georgia is what we saw in the first 3 weeks of the year when they were completely healthy?
I mean, I would be totally shocked. It's been interesting. I think it's a product of not only how good Georgia is, but also the schedule they've played since the Oregon game. Nobody ever talks about Georgia.
Yeah, it's weird.
They're not like a topic of conversation, which they probably
I think that's more of a
being a
I think it's more of a
testament
that they're just so dominant that people just kind of know what we have with Georgia.
Yeah.
We don't hear about Ohio State that much either.
That's true. The other 3:30 game that was really good outside of LSU, we'll get to that in a minute, was the Texas-Oklahoma State game. That game was back and forth. At one point, I had the over 58.5, and the score was like 24 to like 31 at the half, and I was like, "Oh, this is just we're sailing." And then like no score, like towards the end of the third quarter, I'm like, all right, what's going on here? But we ended up hitting the over. Texas, we both had this one wrong. Thought with the Spencer Sanders injury, shoulder injury, they'd be slowed down, but he throws for almost 400 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Texas was good. They put up 34 points, but only 3 points after the half, which really, did them in. And Oklahoma State
also
got the win.
Quinn Ewers not good, man.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he wasn't great. His stats were okay, but yeah, that was an interesting line. Vegas, had that one wrong pretty bad,
or they had it right, depending on how many people bet on that. You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah, that's a great point. It was, yeah. Texas was. I guess it was a pretty close game in the end, but so that Texas falls, they're still ranked 20th, I believe, or did they drop out? They were 20th.
Well, let me look real quick, because that was one thing that people were talking about today, because they looked bad, I guess. Like now like the Texas Tech loss looks bad, like because if you had your second loss, if you had 2 losses, one to Bama by 1, and then one on the road, because what do you call it? One on the road against like a team that was ranked ahead of you, like routes to the top 10. I mean, it looks way worse for Texas because let me see here. They dropped out completely. They are 26 now. They're the first team out in both polls, but like it looks way worse for Texas because they were favored, which really isn't their fault. But at the same time, like, you're not Like, what are you gonna do about that? Like, they're not. Who the fuck? Clemson got a first place vote.
Oh my god, had to have been a
Jesus
Clemson
Christ.
writer.
That's AP polls is a
Clemson's
joke.
Clemson's beat is like notoriously all like very like homerish Clemson alum.
I could see that.
Which isn't actually totally shocking for them, but
No.
So yeah, so Texas falls, Oklahoma State gets a big win. The exciting game we watched was the LSU game,
Yeah.
and Ole Miss continues to struggle in the second half.
So this has now become a thing. This is now 1,000% a thing.
Pretty shocking that a guy like Lane, like, obviously comes in with a great game plan. Is he just getting like totally? Is he not making the right adjustments every single game?
Well, and I think there's people in here that would attest to this. Like, halftime adjustments are like what make what make coaches great, or good coaches good and great coaches great. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to go through it right now because like you said, Team Ranks does a good job of this, of showing like your second half stats, but they don't show it in every game. I mean, it's been a minute since we've seen them like I saw this early on against Tulsa, and people were like, concerned, like, how come they didn't put away Tulsa, and like, we saw them against like Georgia Tech open up to like they had 21 points in the what do you call it, in the first half, and then 21 points in the third quarter, and they kind of just like took their foot off the gas. Their strength of schedule is the worst out of any team going into this weekend. It was the worst out of any contender in the country, right? And what we saw against Tulsa, they had like they opened up like a 35 to 17 lead at the half, right? But they put up 35 points. They scored in 5 of their first 6 offensive possessions. They didn't score a single point in the second half. And since then, I think that was like the turning point. And I went to bat for them and tried to defend them, like, it's because they have, Tulsa's one of the best passing offenses in the country. They've been outscored. I'm doing the math right now, but I'm pretty sure they've been outscored in almost every first half since then, or second half since then. Besides Vandy. Fucking Vandy.
Yeah, and I want to give total credit to not only LSU as a team, but Jaden Daniels, man. Like 21 to 28, 248 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, another 121 yards on the ground with another 3 touchdowns. I mean, that's 2 games in a row where this kid has really, I mean, he established a new school record. I think I saw for touchdowns in 2 weeks.
It was rushing yards in a season.
Oh yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. Oh yeah, so he's accounted for 11 touchdowns over the last 2 games.
Yeah. Yeah, I tell you what, man, if you take away you take away that Vandy game where they put up 35 points in the second half and outscored them 35-8, you're looking at, you got outscored 3-7 against Kentucky at home. You got outscored 10-0 against Tulsa at home. Then you had the Vandy game. You had Auburn at home, and you outscored them 20-17, and that's like, that's a team that we've gone in depth about how they have been awful in the second half. And so that's shocking that they were able to put up that many points at all against you in the second half. But then you have LSU and you get outscored 0 or 28-0 in the second half. Like, the concern for me, if you're Ole Miss, is this is like, it seems like, again, besides Vandy, you did this against, let's see here, in 4 of your last 5 games. So LSU, Auburn, Vandy, Kentucky, and Tulsa, and Vandy's the outlier. You went up by at least 2 scores in the first half of that game, and a couple of times you went up by 2 scores in the first quarter. And you have the ability to put your foot on someone's throat and put them away. And as I've said 1,000 times, that's what elite teams do. That's what championship teams do. And if you're a guy like Lane Kiffin, with now you're up by 14, you've got the whole playbook at your disposal. You could like get real creative and make that defense real uncomfortable. And what ends up happening is that they get absolutely shut down. Like LSU, we saw this a couple weeks ago against Tennessee when they went down early, what that could have looked like with a championship level team, and a team that, if you want to compare them to Ole Miss, about saying, I don't think either team is not necessarily has a bad defense, but like I think the narrative is it's a great offense and that's about it. Well, that's what a great offensive team did to them with Tennessee. They put them away early. they didn't give him a chance to come back and like, I mean, LSU was right back in this game. Like you go up 17-3, and let's see here, within 6 minutes now 17, it's 17-17.
Yeah, so they like came out hot. Quinshon Judkins, another good game. I guess Zach Evans he didn't play in this game.
He got injured early on.
2 touchdowns for Judkins in the first quarter. Ole Miss didn't
Yeah.
score another touchdown all night.
Yeah,
we talked about this in the pregame. It's like, can Jackson Dart, if you're gonna have to toss the ball around a lot, can Jackson Dart go win you a game? I think we know the answer.
I think we do.
No touchdowns.
I'm trying to just do the math on this right now of like their second half drives. You had punt, turnover on downs, punt, turnover on downs, and the end of game. So you had 5 possessions, 2 punts, and technically 3 turnover on downs. But like this second, I got to know what happened in this second series here. They had a turnover on downs, and the drive was 13 plays, and they only had 40 yards, and it only lasted 2 minutes and 11 seconds. I don't even know how you do that.
Not even mad.
Yeah.
So really good win for LSU. Obviously the season's not over for Ole Miss, but we knew they were entering into a tough stretch. Not a great start to that stretch. And LSU, let's see what they can make of their season. They got a big game coming up in a couple weeks.
Yeah, they do. I'm a little bit nervous about that game.
That's in Baton Rouge.
I am. Yeah, so I mean, you haven't heard me say this before, probably, but I'm sure our listeners have ad nauseum. But like, I wasn't that concerned beforehand because, just historically speaking, Alabama has lost 5 times to LSU in Baton Rouge since 1957.
That is some statistic right there.
Yeah, Tide don't lose in Baton Rouge.
And they play every year, so every 2 years.
Yeah. And by the way, Saban has like 2 of those.
That's funny.
At LSU.
Is that gonna be a night game or a day game? Do we know?
So we find out tomorrow. I would be shocked if part of me is like, at Georgia fans, I'm joking when I say this, and I hope this doesn't happen to you guys because you don't deserve it if it does. I just never rule out the potential of the SEC fucking over Georgia or ESPN fucking over Georgia and giving them a noon kickoff in a massive game. Like Georgia, Tennessee is the biggest game. It was against Arkansas last year. That was a top 10 game where game day was there.
Which one's the CBS game?
So they haven't announced it yet, but the thing with CBS, this is the thing that like Georgia fans were saying all week, and I don't know if they understood necessarily, but like CBS only has 1 night game a year, right? And they already used it with the Bama A&M game. So there's not going to be another CBS night game for the rest of the year. There can't be, right?
Okay.
Which means they have first choice every week, and so it's the 3:30 slot. And it makes the most sense to have this game be a 3:30 game on CBS because it's the biggest game of the year. And CBS is a national, like I don't know why they would choose anything else. Yeah, I don't know why they would choose anything else.
Right.
But part of me is like, it's like I'm almost like just like nervous for Georgia fans that something stupid is going to come out tomorrow when they make that announcement. Yeah, one of the Georgia fans in here, Ben Diesel, said, I swear the SEC thinks Athens closes at 5 p.m. or something. It's so weird. It's so bizarre. And I've never understood it. Like, and the Arkansas game that I brought up as like the comparison, that's a little bit different because that was like October 1st of a year ago. So it's not, there's not as much writing on it or anything like that. But this is.
Well, I'm going to go look at the slate, but I mean, couldn't it technically, the one that's not the 3:30 game, be like the ABC game?
No, because I don't think they have. I don't think. I'm pretty sure that game
ESPN, ABC owns ESPN, or Disney owns both.
Yeah, but I think that specific time slot is carved out for. I mean, when's the last time that game was with an SEC team that was 2 SEC teams? I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I haven't either. I don't think so.
I don't know the exact like the rules on it or whatever, but I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen.
All right, so it'll probably be an ESPN night game then.
Somebody said last night. What was last night? Actually, yeah, somebody brought. So that
Last
was
night,
the
what game
ESPN
was on ABC?
Mississippi State Bama, but I think he's saying, or that person's saying that because that's because it was called by Kirk and Fowler, but
It
that's
was on
not
ESPN.
yeah, that's not like ABC is a nationally televised like homes without cable in fucking Saskatchewan are getting that. I think I don't know where Saskatchewan is, are getting that game, and like ESPN is still like, you know, that's not considered like it's nationally televised, but it's not like CBS, ABC type games, like where it goes into every single home that has a TV in general. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Like there should be we shouldn't even be talking about it because it shouldn't even be an issue. It should be a no-brainer that is the 3:30 game. But I've seen them screw Georgia before, and I don't really get it. The only time that hasn't happened, and they got like preferential treatment, not preferential treatment, but like the treatment they should have gotten was the Georgia Notre Dame game in like 2019 when that was the 8:00 game, and it was like, well, it's about damn time.
Yeah, I just don't see a noon, but I could be wrong. Hopefully I am not wrong. What other games? We get into the night games. Obviously, you had Mississippi State and Bama was the one we were streaming. That game just never was close. Mississippi State was lucky to score at the end there.
Are you sure? That's weird because STS said it was the closest 30-6 game they'd ever seen.
I wouldn't agree with that. I mean,
yeah, I wouldn't
obviously in the second half of that game, both teams were. I mean, there was 12 total points in the second half. So, and Mississippi State scored with 4 seconds left.
Here's an interesting stat. Did you know that?
No, actually, they scored with no time because they were just like, well, we're not even going to kick the extra point.
Did you know that Mississippi State had more total yards than Bama did? Bama only had 290 yards of offense.
I did not know that.
I didn't either.
Maybe that's why SCS said it was the closest 36 game ever.
They said that Mississippi State left some points on the board, and that the box score showed that game was a lot closer than it was. Which I didn't have that feeling, but that's what I don't really care. I've learned that most of my takes about that one team is probably going to end up not counting for much anyway. So
when we were watching, we found it kind of strange to like the Leach's game plan where they came out and just running the ball like constantly.
Yeah.
But you brought up a good point. Like they haven't been able to score at all on Bama over the last couple of years, so probably going to try to switch it up, and that didn't really work either.
It did not. Yeah, the whole thing was kind of odd in a lot of ways. I had a lot of feelings.
It was just a slow game.
Yeah,
like not in terms of how long it took, but it was just like nothing exciting ever happened. It felt like
no, and there was it wasn't like I don't think it was like a badly played game necessarily, but it was. I mean, it's one of those things too where like I thought there were a lot of positives to take from it, from terms of okay, like Bama need to come out and do this. Okay, no, so that's one of my issues that I have with this. There's 2 issues I have with this game that I just really frustrate me, and I feel like are I'll just get into it now. I didn't know what the most appropriate time to get into it was, but like I'm just gonna get into it now. So I was thinking about this last night, and this like I was thinking about maybe I need to have like all the like the facts or info or whatever, but I know that I would also go off on this about anyone else in the SEC or country. But the fact that Jermaine Burton played last night was one of the most, like, one of the dumbest, most like inexcusable and shitty things I think I've seen in the Saban era. And like you have video of him hitting a woman on the field after the game. And I've admittedly stayed away from most of like the social media back and forth on that because it's I'm sure it's as toxic as what actually happened on the field to an extent. I'm not, there's no part of it's condoning anything he did. I've seen times like, where players who need the team, you've heard like coaches say like they need the team more than the team needed them. And if you just write them off, that doesn't help them learn a lesson. I don't see what starting Jermaine Burton did it for anybody. And it really, it made me feel like there's a bigger issue right now with Saban and the team than I originally thought, because Jermaine Burton is not, he's not somebody on that team that's going to win you a football game. Like he hasn't done anything in his career, in my opinion, while at Georgia or at Bama, that has been like, well, thank God Jermaine Burton took over and won that football game. I said going into the season, half of his career games at Georgia, he only had, they ended with him having 0 or 1 reception. He had, or maybe it was less than 2 receptions. Like a majority of his production came in like garbage time. He had a decent game against A&M, and but he had two touchdown catches in his first game against Utah State, and that was it. And we haven't seen him do anything remarkable this season. And also, all of those things shouldn't matter when this is like the subject matter at hand with what he did. If you hit a woman and it's on tape, you shouldn't be in a fucking game, regardless of how big it is, regardless if it's, if it's the national championship, or if it's fucking practice. You should not be on the field until that is dealt with moving forward. Like whether it's, hey, we're still trying to gather all the evidence, we're trying to figure out, then fine, then sit his ass out. You have an off week next week, and to be honest, you didn't need Jermaine Burton to win that game, so there's no reason. And if that was the reason, that's even more despicable. If you thought you needed him to win that game, it's just, the whole thing is so gross, and it just pisses me off so much that's what the state of that program is. That like all of these things, you're under scrutiny, and I feel like there's like the stuff with Will Anderson, and he's come under fire, and Saban has looked at times, maybe this is just where things are at. Like all of this is too much for him. Like all of this is too much for Saban to handle anymore. And I love Nick Saban. He's brought my favorite team their best several years that they will ever have. And I got to witness that in real time. He's one of my best friend's dads. He's a great, person off the field in terms of all these things he does, and like philanthropy and what he's brought to that university and the community, all that kind of stuff. But having Jermaine Burton play last night was a sign to me that he doesn't really get it right now. And it really, really, really like pissed me off. And more than anything, it really bummed me out. Like, that doesn't feel like it does like a service to how big of a deal that was. But it really just bummed me out to think that like that person who's done so much for this school and the game and whatever else made that decision. When the clear decision, the err on the side of caution, the easy decision was, maybe we sit that kid out. He laid his hands on a woman. I don't care if she shouldn't have been on the field, in some of your opinion. Whatever the pushback is, that was the end result, is that he hit a woman. He shouldn't touch the field until that shit is figured out. And if it happened anywhere else in the country, I probably would have been even more vocal about it than I am now. And for that, I feel bad, and I apologize that I didn't like look into seeing how like that was as big of a deal as it should have been treated. It just fucking grosses me out.
Yeah, and the thing we talked about last night was, it's one thing if there are allegations that are made against somebody off the field that they hit a woman, but there's really no proof at this point until you get through the process. I could say, okay, we in this country, and you're innocent until you're proven guilty, but there's multiple angles, video of it happening. So though things haven't processed themselves in court yet, we know what happened. It was filmed.
Yeah.
So it makes it different. And even, what did he say before the game that we kind of thought was weird? We were kind of joking about it all night. But he's like, I don't know.
Oh, he made this comment right before kickoff, and they were like, how's your team prepared? And like that was like kind of like a staple of what you've seen from Saban teams in the past, where it's like, all right, you got to get up off the mat and your back's against the wall, and you got to go fucking dominate and win out and blah, blah, blah. And they were like, how did this team prepare this week following that loss to Tennessee? And he said, well, you never know how they prepare, how well they prepared. And you're like, what?
Right.
I've never heard it. Maybe if that's the truth, I've never heard him say that. I don't think I've ever heard any coach say that. That's a really weird thing to say. And, I know there's a comments like, listen, I agree with the comments that are in here. And here's the other thing too that pissed me off. And this is on a much lighter note, but it's on a note I think that has brought up a bunch of like it's been like, under a microscope like very recently. And that's this. So Bama has been the most penalized team. And just so everyone is clear, I'm moving on from the Jermaine Burton thing. And this is not like, in no way am I comparing these two issues as being remotely close to being the same, like in terms of seriousness. This is just the other thing that bothered me about last night. So Bama goes up to Tennessee and has 17 penalties. And you talk about all the penalties they've had on the road and this and that. And I thought that there were a lot of penalties in that game that probably could have also been called on Tennessee. The Bryce hit, I was shocked that wasn't called, especially since it was reviewed, especially with this day and age in terms of how quick people are to call targeting and helmet to helmet stuff and all that kind of stuff. I'm also very aware, as biased as you guys think I might be sometimes, I'm also very aware of the fact that like there's not a single person in the country that's going to feel bad for Bama or Bama fans or anything involving penalties because of what they have perceived to have happened over the last decade, that Bama got all the calls and blah, blah, blah. I fully get that. And I don't think any part of me has been like, hey man, feel sorry for me real quick. No, like I get that. What bothered me was you had 17 penalties in one game and you had it against a team that I thought that I knew going into it was the only team in the SEC that had more penalties per game than Bama. So to have that much of a discrepancy, especially when you're like, man, there's plays where like the receiver's getting his face mask grabbed and up in the air and it's not pass interference nor is it a face mask. And there's, and I know that fans felt like Bama got away with a pass interference call in the end zone or whatever. It just felt like it was so egregiously and drastically different for both teams that it was very one-sided. And I'm not saying they were out to get Bama at all, but it was very one-sided. All I want to see from that is that the next game, when you go out, just make sure that the officials call a better game, do a better job of what their job is. Like if there's a targeting play or helmet to helmet contact and you review it, probably should call that. If there's weird plays where it's like somebody's returning a interception and you throw a flag 40 yards out of the field and then say that weird thing about there's no block in the back or no flag for a block in the back. What I don't want to see is this grossly overcorrection where you're penalizing Mississippi State, who had nothing to do with that game, because of non-calls in the Bama-Tennessee game. And you saw it multiple times last night. The first time Bryce got hit, they threw a flag for roughing the passer. And it was soft as shit. And that kind of stuff, it's like, that doesn't help. That doesn't help you get better at your job if you're an official. That doesn't help like the league get better in terms of the perception of them calling games. It doesn't help the narrative that's being built about, one certain team or a certain team in games getting like preferential treatment. None of that is aided or helped by you going out there and throwing less flags on Bama and more flags on Mississippi State that weren't warranted. I just, that part I didn't get. And they did a good job of some calls and like, I guess, but like to go from a game where like Bama had 17 penalties, they had double-digit penalties on the road in like all three of those games. They've had it like they've been bad in penalties all year. They had the most penalties called on them in the entire country. They had 3 penalties last night. You're telling me that all of a sudden they just got everything figured out with how sloppy that team's been all year and how poorly coached they've been? They just got everything figured out down to 3 penalties? No, that doesn't help anybody. That's fucking stupid.
That's a fair point. Yeah, I didn't feel that way during the game, but also, yeah, looking back, yeah, it was kind of weird.
Bama's had only one game in the past 3 seasons where they've had it like that was where they had less than, I'm sorry, they've had one game in the last 4 years against SEC teams where they've had less than 3 penalties. Just one. And all of a sudden last night in the year where they've had more penalties than ever, they righted the ship. That's fucking stupid, man.
Before we get to our last game, let's take a quick timeout to talk about some of the spicy games that we saw.
Yeah.
No, actually, the spicy plays Texas Pete. Texas Pete has the spice and flavor that's kicking this football season up a notch. If you haven't tried the original hot sauce, which I bought yesterday, threw that out on my social media, had it on my Waffle House this morning, also had it on the pizza that we ordered last night. If you've tried their new traditional barbecue sauce, you got to go out and get it today. Visit TexasPete.com for recipes and hot apparel. Plus, take 20% off your entire order with promo code Uncensored. Win big with Texas Pete when you sauce like you mean it. Texas Pete came through big, and so did South Carolina.
Man.
So there's a lot to take from this game. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got the opening kickoff, old Beamer ball, for a touchdown. You had the fumble and interception deep in A&M territory. Turn that into another 10 points to go up 17-0 on A&M. First time South Carolina's they held on. Texas A&M. We actually made a bet in the Texas Pete Gambling Cave last night with our listener that was in attendance. He bet on A&M to come back and win. I said I'll take that bet all day. And it actually seemed like they possibly were going to at one point.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it was that bad of a bet.
Yeah. But alas, the fighting Texas Aggies. Fight Texas Aggie.
Happy birthday, Kip.
Another loss for the A&M Aggies, and they're 3-4 on the season after being preseason top 6
for the second year in a row.
A great turn of events here for old Jimbo.
Okay, and I know that you love that. Also, I'm gonna out Tyler right now and let everyone in here know that Tyler has an autographed picture of Jimbo in his man cave that's just sitting there. It's personalized too. It's a personalized autograph.
I can't get rid of it because it was given to me as a groomsman gift, and it says to Tyler, like it takes a
great man to be a groomsman.
Yeah,
it's from Jimbo.
Yeah. So my buddy, he actually lives here in town. He comes over to my house. I can't just throw it away. I would.
No, you can't. You can't. No, but okay. So I was thinking about this too last night. I don't feel like there's teams like Arkansas, South Carolina, even because I think the ceiling for South Carolina is one more win, and you're not going to talk me out of that. Maybe they beat Florida at Florida. They're not beating Tennessee. They're not going to beat Kentucky, and we don't even need to get into that because I don't want to get all negative Nancy about this. But going into the year,
Kentucky. I think they could beat Kentucky.
They already lost to Kentucky. I meant to say Tennessee. I meant to say Clemson. So they already beat Kentucky. So you're right. I guess. So, but
I love how we disregarded that they've actually already played.
Yeah. Going into the year,
take by me. I know I'm going out on a limb, but I think they could beat Kentucky this year. Honestly,
what do you help me predict A&M's rest of the year? They have Ole Miss this weekend. It's at home. By the way, this is their first home game in Kyle Field since they played Miami.
That's insane.
Yeah. They have Ole Miss, then they have Florida at home, then they are at Auburn. They have UMass in football, and they have LSU at home as their last game of the year.
I think 3-2 is your best case scenario there.
I mean, you're gonna beat UMass, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that beating Auburn at Auburn is necessarily a gimme.
This is why I'm saying it's the best case. 3-2. Because I don't think you're going to beat Ole Miss.
Yeah.
I don't think you're beating LSU.
Well, yeah, probably not.
I mean, it is a home game. Both of them are. But I haven't seen it. They also lost to App State at home.
Yeah. So. But see, and here's the thing too, is that they just get decimated with injuries. It seems like every single game. And we got to talk about Jimbo's sweatshirt. Which just stole the show last night on social media. But okay, so Connor Wigman comes in to finish out that game because Haynes King gets injured. But Haynes King, so Max Johnson's out for the year. You have 2 quarterbacks left, right? And this is what they kept talking about last night on the broadcast was all right, if you're playing all these young kids to give them exposure and get them what do you call it? Experience. At what point do you just say, all right, fuck it, let's put Connor Wigman out there and he's the future anyway and see what happens? Because Haynes King,
Well, he was out there. Do you remember that?
Who? Haynes King?
Wegman was in the game.
I know he finished the game.
Yeah, but that was because of injury.
So what I'm saying is, would you put him in the rest of the year? Because Haynes King comes in and goes 17 of 32, 178 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. He almost had another interception return for a touchdown, and they ended up tackling him just short of I don't know. They get the ball back in A&M's 10-yard line.
Yes, I play Wegman. What's the point of playing Haynes King at this point? He's not your QB.
No, he's not.
And you got to get Wegman ready for next year because I don't think Jimbo's going to be fired after this year, but he's going to have to damn sure win 10 games next year.
To avoid getting fired?
Yeah. I do think that. Because let's run down the list. Let's say you do go with Wegman. You may have some better upside, but you're going to have some significant downside too. The kid's a true freshman.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be throwing him against, Ole Miss, a Florida team who, isn't great, but they have a really bad defense. So maybe you could win that game. Maybe not. Yeah. At Auburn, they've got a good defense. It's an away game in the SEC. I mean, UMass, whatever. And then LSU. They could technically, I could easily see them losing 4 of those games.
Yeah.
And going and having damn 4-8.
They put up almost 400 yards of offense last night and still lost. And also, the other thing is they forced 2 turnovers. It wasn't like Carolina continues to win the ugliest way possible, and we all love to see it because it's Carolina. That touchdown, that opening kickoff touchdown return was one of my least. It was one of the least aesthetically pleasing kickoff returns for a TD I've ever seen, because usually when you're watching that, you see the crease open up and you're like, right. Oh, and somebody hits that hole and then is just gone. That never happened. It just kept slowly
breaking tackles, slowly
breaking more and more terribly bad effort tackles. It was just bizarre.
It really was.
Yeah.
Anyway. So congratulations to South Carolina. They're ranked. Big win. Have never beat A&M before. So
huge.
First 4. You got to give credit to them as well
since 2013.
Yeah, and looking down their schedule, let's do that real fast. They're 5-2. Their next game is against Mizzou at home. Feel like you could win that game. 6-2. Next one's Vandy. Figure you go 7-2 at that point. The ending stretch is gonna be tough. You got at Florida versus Tennessee, and then at Clemson. I'm not totally ruling out them beating Clemson. I'm not going to totally rule it out.
Yeah, and we shouldn't totally rule out Florida too. Tremendous job from Shane Beamer, and he even said it. They tried their best to give that game away. And I think in the past, even with how bad A&M's been at times this year, that is a game that they would probably come back and win, because from a roster standpoint, A&M has a lot more talent than South Carolina.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
injuries,
I don't know.
Injuries are a big part of it, but still, they still do, even with the injuries.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good job from them, and just obviously the continued struggle you see with A&M, but who this really really helps, and I hate to go back and make it about a team that didn't even play this weekend, but who this really really helps?
Who's that?
Georgia. Because in a couple of weeks, because they've already played South Carolina, and in a couple of weeks, you're going to look up, and I don't know who Oregon has, but in a couple of weeks, when win or lose from that game, when they start talking about that game, the Georgia-Tennessee game, you're going to have a South Carolina team that's most likely 7-2, and at that point, right outside of probably the top, I don't know, top 15, or inside the top 15. I don't know.
Yeah. Great job by Beamer, and obviously we'll see. I saw the Charlotte job came open today, and a couple of the South Carolina coaches are being mentioned for that job. So Good on the Gamecocks. And we've been going for over an hour now, so I think we should probably call it.
That's it.
We're going to be finding out a lot over the next couple of weeks about not only SEC, but just the national picture. And then we get our first college football rankings not after this next weekend, right?
Apparently, they've been doing a Tuesday night show going over like where each team should. I don't fucking know. I can't even wrap my head around it right now.
Okay. All
But
right.
they've been doing like Kirk brought it up last night. He's like, if you love the semantics, we do that show every Tuesday. And it was like, okay, probably not.
All right, man. Well, hey, look, it was another great one. I appreciate you coming up and doing the Texas Pete Gambling Cave. We'll have to find a bigger game to live stream next time.
For sure.
So, or maybe we'll make it to a game one day.
Yeah, I like that too.
All right. Well, hey, everybody, we appreciate you tuning in tonight and to tune into the podcast. Give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Go to YouTube, Saturday Down South, and give us a like and subscribe. You get notifications when we go live. And we appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next week.